I hadn't slept well in weeks. The house was too quiet since the divorce, and the silence felt heavier at night. Some nights I'd leave the TV on just to hear something breathing. Besides me, I wasn't expecting Liam to come home early from college, but when he walked through the door that afternoon, taller, broader, with that same gentle smile, I felt something shift inside me. It was subtle. Maybe the way he hugged me or how he didn't let go right away. But it was different. He said he just needed a break. Finals were draining him. His roommates were too much and he missed real food. I welcomed the company even if I didn't say it out loud. We fell into a routine. Instantly, I'd make dinner. He'd wash the dishes and we'd sit on the couch afterwards, sometimes watching a movie, sometimes just talking. I was careful not to let my loneliness show. He'd always been a sweet boy, empathetic, sensitive, and I didn't want to put that weight on him. Still, he noticed one night I was standing at the sink zoning out while scrubbing a pan, and he wrapped his arms around me from behind. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, too embarrassed to speak. My throat tightened. I wanted to lean back into him just for a second. I chalked the moment up to sentimentality. We'd both been under stress. That's all it was, but the little things started building up. He started calling me beautiful when I dressed up for work, teasing me about the way I hummed when I cooked. One night, he handed me a glass of wine and said, "You should let yourself relax more. You worked too hard." I laughed, brushing it off, but I couldn't stop thinking about the way he looked at me. There was a night not long after when I was half asleep, my mind heavy and foggy. I thought I heard the door open, quiet footsteps, then the edge of the bed dipping down. I must have been dreaming, I told myself, but the warmth beside me felt real. I didn't move, couldn't part of me. Thought it was a memory, maybe of when he was younger and scared of storms slipping under the covers like it was still okay. I didn't open my eyes. There was a hand just barely grazing mine, not gripping, not holding, but hovering close enough to feel the heat. I remember lying there wide awake now, heart pounding. I didn't move. I didn't pull away. I told myself it was innocent, that it wasn't what it felt like the next morning. He was in the kitchen pouring coffee, like nothing had happened. I said nothing. Maybe I imagined the whole thing. Maybe I wanted to believe I had. That thought lingered more than I cared to admit. Liam was always respectful, always kind, but now there was something else underneath his gestures. He'd lean in a little closer when we spoke. His hand would rest on the small of my back when he passed behind me. It wasn't overt, never inappropriate, just enough to make my breath catch. I wasn't proud of how I started to respond. I caught myself checking the mirror before sitting down with him, putting on perfume before bed. Even if no one was coming over. Stupid things I kept telling myself. I was imagining it, that I was being paranoid. Or maybe just desperate for attention, but it didn't feel desperate. Felt easy, like slipping into something I'd missed but forgotten the name of. One evening, I fell asleep. Earlier than usual, I'd had a glass of wine and laid down without turning off the light. I woke up sometime later, not fully, but enough to sense movement. My eyes stayed closed. I was too tired to get up. Then that same feeling, the weight beside me, the soft shift of the mattress, the quiet sound of breathing that wasn't mine. A hand brushed against mine again, not forceful. Just a touch stayed there longer this time. Still not holding. Just present, could have moved. I could have asked something, anything. But I didn't. I laid there with my heart racing and my mind trying to give it meaning. When I woke up the next morning, the light was off. The door was closed. My bed was empty and the warmth was gone. But I remembered the hand and the fact that I didn't pull away. I kept pretending nothing happened, but the silence between us wasn't the same. It wasn't cold or uncomfortable. It was loaded. Like we were both trying not to look at something that had already happened. Liam still smiled at me in the mornings, still helped with groceries and asked how my day was. But there was a softness in his voice now, a gentleness that didn't feel like just a son being kind to his mother. I started noticing the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. It wasn't the way someone looks at their parent. There was no tension or awkwardness, just steady eyes, curious, tender, focused. The kind of look that made me turn away before I could react. He noticed everything when I wore a different shade of lipstick. When I let my hair down instead of tying it back. When I took a little longer getting dressed in the morning, I tried to convince myself he was just being sweet, that I was misreading all of it. But when he told me, "You don't need anyone else to see how beautiful you are," I stopped pretending I didn't know how to respond. I just smiled weakly and walked away. But inside, I felt something unlock. I was ashamed of it, but it was real. He started spending more time at home. Even though his friends texted and called constantly, he'd sit close beside me on the couch, knees brushing. I didn't shift away. I didn't even want to. We'd talk for hours about nothing and everything. His dreams, my regrets. Books we both liked, shows. We were watching the space between us kept narrowing, and neither of us seemed in a hurry to keep it. One night, he told me he never felt comfortable opening up to anyone else, that I made him feel safe. I almost cried. It wasn't just the words. It was how he said them, like it hurt to say them. But he needed me to know. I told him I was glad he trusted me, that I'd always be here, and meant it. But there was something else in my voice I couldn't disguise. He heard it too. He looked at me and neither of us spoke. That silence felt louder than anything we'd said. He started helping me around the house more. Fixing shelves, organizing the garage, bringing me coffee before I even asked. I started waking up earlier just to have breakfast ready for him. There was this unspoken exchange, small repeated acts that said things neither of us dared to. It wasn't about lust, it was about comfort. The quiet recognition that we'd filled some void in each other. I caught myself wondering how it looked from the outside. I even stopped inviting neighbors over as if they could see through the walls, but inside, it felt normal, even natural. He belonged here. We understood each other in ways no one else could. There was a night he sat on my bed while I was brushing my hair. He said nothing for a long time, just watched. I asked him what he was thinking. He hesitated, then said, "I wish I could take all the hurt away from you." I didn't speak. Couldn't he reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear? My breath caught. The room felt frozen. My heart was racing. I didn't move. I didn't stop him. I didn't even blink when I looked into his eyes. I didn't see guilt. I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Desire, yes, but also care. A kind of love that didn't feel twisted even if everything about it should have. I wanted to look away, but I didn't. That night, I laid in bed for hours staring at the ceiling. Everything in me screamed to draw a line to set things right, but another part of me, quieter, deeper, just wanted to feel something again. I'd been numb for so long, starved of touch, of tenderness, of being seen. Liam saw me. He saw all of me. I was supposed to push him away, tell him this wasn't right, but I didn't. And maybe the scariest part was that I didn't want to doubt. I told myself I was still in control, that whatever was happening between us could be dismissed with silence and denial. But that stopped being true the night he knocked on my door without saying a word. I opened it and he looked at me like he didn't know how to explain what he was feeling, only that he had to be near me. His eyes were red. He said he had a nightmare, couldn't sleep. I moved aside and he walked in. That simple. I didn't ask what the dream was. I didn't ask why he came to me. Instead of going back to bed, I just sat beside him and waited. He didn't talk for a long time. Then out of nowhere, he said, "I don't think I'm ever going to find someone who sees me the way you do." I felt my chest tighten. I tried to laugh it off, but the sound died before it even reached my throat. I looked down at my hands. I couldn't look at him. I felt like if I did, something would happen that I couldn't take back. His hand reached for mine slowly. I didn't stop him. I let him hold it, let my fingers curl into his. I told myself it was comfort, that it didn't have to mean anything else, but I knew that was a lie. There was nothing innocent left in the way we touched. He leaned closer, and my body reacted before my thoughts could catch up. I felt the warmth of his breath on my skin, the pause before something irreversible when he finally kissed me. It wasn't rough or rushed, it was hesitant, trembling like he was giving me the chance to pull away. I didn't kiss him back, gently, lowly, like I was waking up from something long and cold. His hand stayed respectful, cautious, but I could feel the tension under his skin. He wanted more, and God help me. So did I. We didn't speak. Words would have ruined it, brought logic into a place that had no room for it. Everything in me screamed that it was wrong, but nothing about it felt cruel or dangerous, felt warm, felt like belonging. We didn't go further than that, but we stayed in each other's arms until morning, his head on my shoulder, his fingers lightly tracing the side of my hand like he was afraid I'd disappear if he stopped. I closed my eyes and breathed him in, committing the moment to memory. Even as I hated myself for wanting it, I kept thinking about the years I spent begging for affection from men who only gave me silence the nights I cried myself to sleep. The holidays I spent smiling through tears, the cold touches that felt obligations than love. This didn't feel like that when he finally drifted off. I stayed awake. My mind racing with everything I just done. I had broken every rule I ever swore I'd live by. I had betrayed something fundamental, not just as a mother, but as a person. But then his hand moved in his sleep and rested over mine, and I stopped caring about anything else. There was no shame in that moment, only quiet in the light of morning. It all looked different. I watched him sleep for a few seconds longer than I should have, then gently slipped away. I stood in the hallway, not sure if I should cry or scream. I didn't do either. I just stood there and tried to figure out who I'd become overnight. He came into the kitchen later like nothing had changed, but it had everything. Had I couldn't look him in the eye, he didn't press me. He just gave me a soft smile and poured me coffee like he always did. I held the mug and tried to ignore how my hands were shaking. I kept thinking if I could just rewind 24 hours, I'd make a different choice. But that wasn't true. I knew it. And the worst part was I didn't regret it. Not the touch, not the kiss, not the way he held me. I regretted needing it, but I didn't regret feeling wanted again. I thought, maybe if we kept our distance, it would fade. I tried pulling back less, talking, less time together, more reasons to be out of the house. But he noticed immediately. He didn't question it, just started giving me space, like he understood that made it worse. The guilt didn't come from what we did, came from how much I missed it when it stopped. Every quiet dinner felt lonelier than the ones I had before he came home. I caught myself glancing down the hallway, hoping to hear his steps. And when I didn't, I'd sit in my room, scrolling through old photos, like they could explain who I used to be before I crossed the line. He never brought it up. Not once he treated me with the same calm, steady affection, but there was a restraint in him now, a tension that made everything feel heavier one morning. I asked him if he was okay, and he smiled like he'd practiced it. Yeah, he said, just tired. That was the beginning of the end. He started going out more, reconnecting with friends, bending nights away, and I knew he wasn't trying to hurt me. He was trying to fix something that couldn't be undone, the less we were around each other. The easier it would be to pretend it never happened. I thought that was what I wanted, but I found myself waiting up. Hoping he'd come home late again, I hated. How that made me feel like a teenager chasing something secret and reckless. I was too old to be that fragile when he finally sat me down. He didn't waste time. He said he was going back to campus early, moving into a new place with people he barely knew. He nodded. I didn't ask why. Already knew he said he didn't want to make things harder, that being close was starting to mess with both of us. He kept his voice even, but I could see it in his eyes. The regret, the sadness, the pull that still lingered even as he tried to sever it. I told him I understood that he should go, that I wanted him to be happy, and that was the most honest thing I said. I did want that for him, even if it meant never seeing him again. The night before he left, he stayed in his room. I stayed in mine. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was numb, like we had nothing left to say that wouldn't make things worse. But then he knocked. Just once I opened the door, and he didn't speak. He just stepped forward and held me long and tight. Not desperate, not selfish. Just a silent goodbye that hurt more than anything else could have. I didn't cry. Not while he was there, but when the door shut behind him the next morning and his footsteps faded down the driveway, I collapsed. I thought the guilt would eat me alive, but it didn't. What lingered wasn't shame. It was longing not just for the touch or the comfort, but for what it meant. Being seen, being wanted. Feeling like someone's whole world for even a moment. That's what I mourned. Not just the boy I let get too close, but the version of myself I found in his eyes, soft, worthy. alive. I haven't heard from him since he didn't block me. He didn't vanish. He just let distance do what it's supposed to, erase things quietly. Some nights I still wake up and think. I hear him in the hallway. My hand will twitch, reaching for something that isn't there. I've tried dating again, tried pretending that part of my life was a fluke, a mistake I've moved past. But no one looks at me the way he did. No one listens like he did. I know how it sounds. I know what people would say if they knew, but they didn't live it. They didn't feel the silence he filled or the way his presence stitched something back together in me that had been broken for years. I don't regret the moment. I regret the cost. But if I'm honest, if I could go back, knowing everything I know now, I wouldn't change a thing. Not the kiss, not the night, not the goodbye, because for a little while I was wanted. Like I mattered. And I don't think I'll ever feel that again.